In my video about 9 misconceptions about ancient Egypt, I talked a fair bit about the personal and regnal names of both Hatshepsut and Nefertiti, and how sometimes they were called this, and sometimes this, as titles that accompany those names. For instance, I pointed out that Hatshepsut was called the son of Ra rather than the daughter of Ra, and how she was also called he of Sedge and Bee, a phrase we more commonly translate as king of Upper and Lower Egypt, or dual king. As with all things ancient Egypt, these separate concepts form a sort of mishmash, so let's take a few minutes to unpack the names of the pharaohs, all 5 of them. European interests have defined Egyptology for the last 200 years, and so our naming convention for the kings of Egypt has been to take their personal names, such as Ramesses, Amenhotep and Thutmose, and stick a numeral after them, Ramses II, Amenhotep III, Thutmose IV, but that's not how the ancient Egyptians, or the other nations that surrounded and interacted with them, referred to these kings. Just as the current Bishop of Rome is Pope Francis, and not Bishop Jorge Bergoglio, pardon my unaccented pronunciation, the pharaohs took regnal names, known to us as throne names when they were crowned. These were their names thereafter for diplomatic, official and administrative purposes. They retained their personal names, and in most cases added a few afterwards, in a list that we nowadays call the royal titulary. Throughout, we're going to use Hatshepsut as an example, since we started with her, and I'll do my best to explain what each of the 5 names might signify. The oldest of the 5 titles is the first in the traditional list. It's called the Horus Name because it is traditionally enclosed with this sign, which is a serech, a protective boundary guarded up top here by the god Horus. The sign replicates a grand palatial wall or doorway, and the presence of Horus tells us that this person is the god incarnate. We see serech names going all the way back to the first pharaoh of both Egypts, Narmer, and even earlier than that. Narmer is his Horus name, and may also have been his given name. Here, he promises to be a harsh or stinging incarnation of the god. Overall, we might look at this title or name as a promise for what kind of king the pharaoh is destined to be. Hatshepsut was called Horus, mighty of greatness. The use of Ka here, which I translated as greatness, might be spirit in the sense of her soul, but it's been used to mean the benevolence of a king, similar in some ways to the way we call someone large of spirit or magnanimous. So it could be mighty of spirits, but I'm going with greatness. Up next is the Two Ladies name. Two Ladies is a calque of the word Nebti, which this word is transliterated as. The 2 ladies in question are Nekhbet and Wadjet, protective goddesses who accompany the pharaoh in all he does and defend him from evil. Let's note as well that this isn't ladies as in the polite word for women, whatever that means. This is ladies as in female lords. I think based on many of the 2 ladies' names we know, this comes off like a prayer or a wish for the accomplishments or status of the king. So while your Horus name might be Horus, mighty and awesome, your 2 ladies' name might be living forever and being generally liked. Remember that these phrases straddle the line between names and titles, so for some earlier pharaohs, their Horus or Nebti name is all we have to call them by. Though Nebti names had been in use for almost as long as Horus names, the first use in this final form was with the king Smerket in the First Dynasty, whose regnal or throne name was belonging to the 2 ladies. After Smerket, this 2 ladies component was added, just like this, in subsequent pharaonic names. Perhaps we are therefore to read it always as belonging to the 2 ladies, as Smerket used it, just with this part not spelled out. Other translations of this element include champion of and spokesman for. I like champion of, so for Hatshepsut we have, among others, the Nebti name champion of the 2 ladies, flourishing of years. I did indeed say among others. This applies to the Horus name a lot of the time too. Because these are ceremonial forms of address reserved for the full spelling out of a royal title, they fluctuate a bit over time. Hatshepsut had another attested Nebti name, who has seized lands, and the illustrious Amenhotep III had multiple Horus and 2 ladies names expressing worship and declaring his accomplishments. The next name is called the Horus of Gold or Golden Falcon name by Egyptologists, but the term in Egyptian was simply the Golden Name. We call it the Golden Horus because of Horus standing atop the hieroglyph for gold. The meaning of this name is very speculative, but this hieroglyph is used in a number of precious metals, some of them including electrum and silver gilt, but also silver itself, and of course gold. Gold, because it doesn't tarnish or corrode, and because it shines yellow like the sun, is believed to be a material representation of divine eternity. Horus stands atop it, perhaps as the Lord of Eternity. The king is mortal, but the royal Horus spirit endures forever. That's my 2 cents. To turn it into a full title, I'm going to translate this as gold. So I'm interpreting this name to mean this is how the pharaoh is like the metal gold. Hatshepsut therefore was as gold, divine of appearance. Now we get to the last 2 names, the names that have come up once or twice in my videos and that you might be more familiar with. The first is the throne name, the assumed name taken upon accession and which appears on official documents both within Egypt and to the wider world. Now, while I'm calling it a regnal name because that's what it became, its origins are less clear. Like the Nebti name, which seems to have at one point been either a given or regnal name, the throne name's origins are ambiguous. It is recognisable by the distinctive hieroglyphic phrase given here, where the sedge and bee are interpreted as representing the 2 kingdoms. I think that there's an element of multiple dualities at play, and hence the translation dual king. There are many dualities the pharaoh represents or embodies. He is the king of 2 lands, i.e. the valley and the delta. He is both mortal and divine, having responsibilities both to his people and to more abstract entities such as Ma'at, justice personified. He is master over the red land and black, the desert which surrounds Egypt, representing a border he must guard, and the dark fertile soil is his nation's most precious and foundational resource. He is Horus upon the 2 horizons, the gateway to eternity on the western horizon, and the promise of rebirth on the eastern. On top of the pharaoh's administrative, diplomatic and military duties, it's a wonder they got anything done. The Nisu element appears in other titles, specifically in reference to those who acted on the king's behalf. It was a symbol of executive authority. The title Nisu was on its own taken simply to mean king, but the Biti part was used in a few titles. Interestingly, it was often titles having to do with economic roles in government. This is perhaps due to the immense value that honey, and therefore bees, had to the Egyptian people as a trade good, currency, and pharmaceutical. Hatshepsut's throne name was Ma'at Kare, which has a handful of translations. Sometimes it was written like so, with the goddess Ma'at, other times with the feather, indicative of the concept of Ma'at as supreme, unimpeachable cosmic justice, other times with this sickle blade spelling out the word Ma'at. Each of these provides different nuances, so translators can more or less take their pick. Since we translated Ka earlier to mean greatness, I'll keep that going here and say that Hatshepsut was dual king, justice is the greatness of Ra. The last name is the one you or I are likely to use when referring to the pharaohs. It's their personal name, given to them at birth. The first few Egyptian names successfully translated were personal names: Cleopatra, Ptolemy, Thutmose, and Ramesses. These names held the key to deciphering the hieroglyphs. So that might explain their preferred use, as well as Europe's tendency not to give its monarchs regnal names that differ from their birth names. The names Tutankhamun, Nefertiti, Amenhotep, Akhenaten, and, yes, Hatshepsut were personal names, though there might be people itching to correct me about Akhenaten. It wasn't his birth name as such, he was called Amenhotep, but it was his personal name. He changed it after his reign began. A similar story occurred with Tutankhamun, who was born Tutankhaten. Hatshepsut's personal name was, sometime into her reign, augmented with the phrase Khnemet Amun, meaning united with Amun, her justification for this being that she was both the daughter and consort of the, at the time, supreme deity Amun. Personal names were preceded with this phrase, meaning son of Ra, to indicate their divine heritage, though there are instances of the phrase Lord of Appearances instead. Hatshepsut was son of Ra, foremost of noble ladies, united with Amun. I'll take us home with the full titularies of some famous kings. Do note that some of these had multiple variants of these names, either attested in monuments or king lists. So while I'll try to keep them consistent across sources, that won't always be possible. Hatshepsut, Horus, mighty of greatness, champion of the two ladies, flourishing of years, as gold, divine of appearance, dual king, justice is the greatness of Ra, son of Ra, foremost of noble ladies, united with Amun. Tutankhamun, Horus the strong bull, pleasing of birth, champion of the two ladies, great of the palace of Amun, as gold, elevated of appearances, satisfying to the gods, dual king, lord of the forms of Ra, son of Ra, the living image of Amun. Ramesses the Great, Horus the strong bull, beloved of Ma'at, oh my fecking heck, he had a lot of variant names, huh? Champion of the two ladies, protector of Egypt, subduer of foreign lands, as gold, rich in years, great in victories, dual king, potent is the justice of Ra, the chosen of Ra, son of Ra, Ra has birthed him, beloved of Amun. Jesus, alright, climb down off Ra's back, he gets it. Amenemhat III, Horus, supreme of will, champion of the two ladies, inheritor of the two lands, as gold, enduring of life, dual king, belonging to the justice of Ra, son of Ra, Amun is foremost. Horus, guardian of Egypt, champion of the two ladies, the lion great of might, who seizes mountains, lands, and deserts, as gold, the strong bull who protects Egypt, ruler of the sea and all the sun encircles, dual king, chosen of Ra, beloved of Amun, son of Ra, Alexandros. That's a lot to get through, and I hope that's shed some light on the complex tradition the pharaohs were part of. If you're anything like me, it was a bit much to take in all in one go, but above all remember that it was really mainly the throne name that was used once they were in power. Now, this video's getting a bit long already, so we'll call it a day for now. Huge thanks to Peter Lundstrom of Pharaoh.se. We've never interacted, but his website has been one of my favourite Egyptological resources for a while, and all of the pharaonic hieroglyphic names used in this episode of Armchair Egyptology have come from his website. If you want to see more royal titularies, head over there. I'll put a link in the description. Please let me know if you want more stuff about the ceremonial and traditional aspects of Egyptian kingship. There are some fascinating nuances to it, and of course it evolved over time. Until next week, my fellow armchair Egyptologists, however many names you might possess, life, prosperity, and health to you all. Thanks for watching. Head over to my channel for more, or click here to see what the YouTube demons think you should watch next. I hope you'll consider subscribing. If you'd like to support and collaborate on the channel with me, go to patreon.com/armchairegypt. You can also join my Discord community, there's an invite link in the description.